And welcome back, and it is the 7th of May, higher plus 5 a day, and let's just go straight to the first question. Right, now I'm glancing through the words without reading them out loud, and I can see already this bit down here which tells me it's bounds, so I'm not happy. I don't like bounds questions. The good news is bounds questions are easy marks in the exam, quite a lot of marks for this, but I don't like doing them. I also notice quickly looking around that I want the lower and upper bound, so I'm going to have to do everything, aren't I? Right, what do I have? I have v equals u plus at. Now the nice thing is I'm adding and multiplying, so everything's upper or everything's lower. That makes it a bit easier. So let's do my things in order. So u is 5.4 to one decimal place. That's 5.5 and 5.3. So the upper and lower are 5.35 and 5.45. Okay. A. That is 4.9 to one decimal place. That's 4.9, 5.0 and 4.8. So the lower is 4.85 and the upper is 4.95. These are marks in the exam, so definitely worth getting these right. Now, I don't really want to squeeze this in. Let's do it here. Not ideal. So therefore V is 25.32 to two decimal places. So the decimal place above is 25.31 and the decimal place below is 25.33, which means the upper is 25.325 and the lower is 25.315. Not happy. Let's carry on. Now I've just realised I've missed something really important here. It says for T, not for V. So the first thing I need to do is rearrange this. So it's going to be T is equal to V minus U over A, which makes this not nice because therefore my T upper is my V upper, the biggest value of V, take away the smallest value I can, and then divide by the smallest value I can. So in other words, let's write this out anyway. So my V upper, I'm going to highlight it over here, is this one here. My U lower is this one, and my A lower is this one. So that's going to give me, let's write that out. So 25.325, this is not a nice question, minus 5.35, and divide all that by 4.85. Calculator out, and that gives me 4.118556. And I will carry on writing it in the real exam, let's do the 7 as well. It doesn't tell me how many decimal places to do, so I'm going to do that to at least 4 or 5 decimal places. Wow, not a nice question. However, now we've done one, the other one's not too bad. So T lower is going to be to start with the lowest value, take away as much as I can, so U upper, and then divide that by as much as I can, so A upper. So that is going to be, and I'm going to choose a different one here to get it right. So it's 25.315. minus 5.45 and divide by 4.95. So let's pull all this out. So that's going to be 25.315 minus, what am I doing? U upper, which is 5.45. By the way, this is a good test of laying things out neatly because it's easy errors to make here. Right, calculate average again, which gives me 4.0131313. Actually, this is a bit easier to write down because this is 4.013 recurring. And that's it. I mean, just to state to the obvious, the lower is lower than the upper. Good start. I'm happy with that. You might have heard me say this before. I tend to check the answers before I put them up. So I will have had a quick look through this, but not a nice question, not unreasonable, could be on your exam. Probably won't make you do both, but makes you understand how to do them anyway. Next question. And now we have a vectors question. Wow. Let's read through what we've got. So OABC is a parallelogram. So straight away that's important because then I know that this is also A and this is also C. And then it says Y is the midpoint of AC. Okay, so AC is a diagonal, all right, and so Y is in the middle. Okay, and OAD is a straight line. So that's here. So that's a straight line. Okay, where O to A to D is Z to 1. Great. I'm not going to write anything there at all. And then it says, given that Y to D, so D's here, so Y to D, so it's telling me this. I'm going to get rid of that so it's not there, but Y to D is 6A minus a half C. Find the value of Z. Right. This is me thinking. I think what I'm going to do, we have to be really careful here, because I'm going to do something, and it doesn't mean it's the only way of doing it, but it's the way that I think is the best way of demonstrating. And let me walk through as I go through it, but please don't think that there's only one way of doing this, and therefore how did he know that? And the answer is there's lots of ways of doing this question. I think the way that I'm about to do it makes most sense. So I'm going to find O to D. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to do O to C, and then I'm going to add on C to Y, and then I'm going to add on Y to D. I'll clearly have to use the thing I've been given. So O to C, well, that's the easy bit, because O to C is C, and C to Y, well, C to Y from the question is half of C to A. So that's going to be half of C to A. I'll write that down there. And then Y to D that we know is 6A minus a half C. Again, you'll hopefully see where I'm going with this. So that means, well, C minus a half C is, actually no, I'll leave that as it is for now. So that's going to be C plus a half of C to A. Well, C to A is minus C plus A. So it's going to be half of A minus C plus 6A minus a half C. Now let's start collecting. So we've got to do this carefully. So I've got half A plus 6A. Now, unusually, I'm going to use mixed numbers, so that's going to be 6.5A. And then I've got C minus a half C minus a half C, which of course is no C's. And that must be true, right? Because it tells me in the question that this is A. So therefore, it has to be in the direction of A, and it's got no C's within it. O to D, which is the thing I'm working out, remember I'm doing O to D, that is in the direction of A. So it's unsurprising my C's have disappeared. But crucially, I've worked out what O to D is. I've worked out that O to D is 6.5A. And I know O to A, so remember O to D equals O to A plus A to D. And I know O to A is A, and I know O to D is 6.5A, so therefore this must be 5.5A, otherwise known as 11 over 2. Now, think about what I've got. I've got the ratio of O to A to A to D. And that ratio is 1 to 11 over 2, 5.5. Which means if I want it in the ratio Z to 1, well, that's the same as 2 over 11 to 1. Which means that my Z is equal to 2 over 11. That's a good question. I like that question. That is not too hard. That is a difficult vector problem question. Well done if you got that. Again, pause the video. Please go back to something I said before. There's more than one way of doing this question. Don't think that's just the only way I've done it, but I knew I had to use Y to D. I knew I had to pull it together somehow, and I knew I needed to reference it or relate it to something else I knew, in which case that A is a straight line. Good question. Next question and final question today. Oh, it's another proof. Prove the sum of the cubes of two consecutive odd integers. Right, okay. Now, if you've seen me do this before, we've had a few of these recently. Go back and watch the previous ones. This is a slightly harder one. So let values be. Now, I'm going to do 2n minus 1, so that's an odd number. And the next odd number is 2n plus 1, because I know that means things are going to cancel. And then I need to work out the cubes. So 2n, actually, that's, yeah, 2n plus 1. What am I doing? The sum. So 2n plus 1 cubed. Now, I know from doing A level that I can just kind of write this out. You might need to do the expanding, i.e. do 2n plus 1 times 2n plus 1, and then multiply by another 2n plus 1. I'm going to use something called the binomial expansion that you will learn at A level, just for speed, which means I can just write this out in one go. So let's just write this out. So 2n cubed is going to be 8n cubed. And then I'm going to add on 3 times 2n squared, which is going to be 3 times 4, which is going to be 12n squared. And then I'm going to add on 3 times 2n, which is 6n. And then I'm going to add on 1. Now, again, I know that because I've done binomial expansion. So I've done a bit of A level. I've got some help here. It means I can do that a bit quicker. Also means I can do very similar with 2n minus 1 cubed, which is going to give me 8n cubed minus 12n squared plus 6n minus 1, which means when I add these things together, that's going to give me 16n cubed plus 12n. And that's, what am I trying to do? Show that it's always a multiple of 4, so I can write that as 4 times 4n cubed plus 3n, which is factor of 4, therefore multiple 4, which means I've proven it to be true. And that's it, today done. I've said this the last 3 days, and I really do mean it. These are really good questions. They're definitely not too hard. I know sometimes they feel really hard, but they're not too hard. That bounds question was a little bit annoying. The vectors question, very fair. And the last question, I think probably you wouldn't get that because they're cubed, but equally not an unfair question. Let me know how that went for you. Do like, subscribe. See you tomorrow.